You've said the same thing 17 times. Don't date him. Study harder. That group is bad news. Your teen nods like a bobblehead in a car chase. You're delivering a TED Talk. They're buffering like hotel Wi-Fi. Then Maya says it once. Voice note, Maya. Lip gloss, low key, zero credentials. Your teen reconsiders. Immediately, that's a verdict. Filed before you knew you were being assessed. On ordinary Tuesday afternoons, in small conversations you forgot by dinner. 5 ways your teen decided whether your voice still mattered, including the one most parents never clock as the turning point that decide whether your opinion carries weight or whether you've already moved to the noted, ignored folder. 1. The firmware update you didn't authorize. There's a Stanford study from 2022 that puts kids in an fMRI scanner and played them recordings of their mom's voice alongside a stranger's voice. For kids under 12, the mom's voice lit up the brain's reward centers like a Christmas tree. Attention systems, emotional processing, the works. Her voice was basically the Wi-Fi router for everything that mattered. Meanwhile, your advice is now loading with a spinning wheel. Then they scanned the teenager. At 13, it flips. Nature looked at parents and said, "You've had enough influence. Let's make this weird." The brain starts responding more strongly to unfamiliar voices. Peers, teachers, the random podcast host their friend shared at midnight. A guy speaking softly into a microphone about discipline and cold showers. Lead researcher Daniel Abrams described it plainly. Teens aren't choosing this. Their brain is running a biological signal that shoves their attention outward, away from the voices they grew up trusting, toward the wider social world. So when your teenager shrugs at your advice and then pivots because Maya sent a 30-second voice note, that's a firmware update that shipped without your permission. This is also why volume doesn't help. You can't override a voice they've already started tuning out by yelling louder on it. That's not leadership. That's just Dolby surround anxiety. But here's the thing. Every teenager gets this brain shift. What varies is what happens after, because the shift only explains why they're listening to more voices now. It doesn't explain why yours specifically stopped carrying the same weight. That part has nothing to do with biology. That's a credibility question. Your teenager has been quietly deciding that longer than you realize. 2. The conversations they still remember. Researcher Nancy Darling tracked parental authority across 4 years of adolescence. Every teen grants less automatically as they get older. What varies is the speed. The moments that speed it up are never the explosive ones. Tuesday afternoon moments, off your radar completely. It's the time they came to you upset and somehow left with homework. A 20-minute masterclass on what they should have done differently, when all they wanted was someone to sit in the mess with them for 60 seconds. It's the time you were confidently wrong about something in their world. Got the friend's name wrong. Made a verdict with zero information and delivered it like you'd done the research. They don't correct you. They just logged it. This person is guessing and doesn't know what they're guessing. It's because I said so. The conversation ended. Authority took over. And authority, once a teenager understands their cooperation is optional, runs entirely on earned credibility. And they felt the difference immediately. It's the time your position shifted between Monday and Friday, and the only thing that changed was your mood. One day, it's absolutely not. Friday night, it's fine, whatever, just wear a jacket. A signal that shifts based on emotional weather stops reading as reliable. Each of these moments is small enough to forget by dinner. Your teen didn't forget any of them. And unreliable narrators don't get the real story, they get the highlight reel. 3. The test that already ran. Here's where it gets expensive, because while you thought you were parenting, your teen was running an audit quietly with results they never shared. They mentioned something minor, a situation at school, something small enough it wouldn't cost much if it went wrong. Then they went quiet. They were watching your face, monitoring whether you asked a follow-up question or immediately entered FBI interrogation mode, whether you stayed in their world for a second or yanked it into yours, whether what they told you stayed between you or somehow ended up in a phone call that began with, "You'll never believe what happened." If you stayed curious, if you asked, "Rough how?" instead of, "Well, did you try ignoring them?" the door opened a crack wider next time. If you launched straight into solving a problem they hadn't asked you to solve, or made it about your own anxiety, or brought it up 3 days later in front of someone else, the door got a little heavier. A teen who's still willing to bring you the small stuff is running a test drive on residential streets to see if the highway's safe. The moment they stop mentioning even the minor things, the test came back negative. And here's the part that makes this hard to catch. The downgrade doesn't look like anger. Honestly, anger would be easier. At least angry people still care enough to yell. This looks like everything's fine. 4. What it looked like once they'd filed the verdict. Any one of these on its own is just a mood. 3 or more, consistently, that's a pattern. They answer every question with the same 4 emotionally evasive words. Good. Fine. I don't know. Whatever. The official vocabulary of someone emotionally subcontracting the conversation. They've stopped arguing. Used to push back on curfew. Fight about screen time. Have opinions. Now they just nod. That's someone who's decided talking just wasn't worth it anymore. They correct themselves mid-sentence when you're in the room. Started saying something real, caught your eye, and dialed it back to the version that won't generate a follow-up interrogation. Nothing says safe emotional environment like being questioned over waffles. When something actually happens, a real question, a real problem, they text someone else from the bathroom like a tiny, emotionally exhausted secret agent while you're in the next room making dinner. They still tell you about their day. Just the highlights. The version with the conflict removed and the feelings buffered. Like a quarterly earnings call. Technically accurate, emotionally audited. Like talking to a politician who knows the microphone is on. They have a problem and you find out about it 3 weeks later from their friend's mom at a soccer game while holding a folding chair and pretending you already knew. Every parent's favorite Oscar-worthy performance, which is a devastating way to discover your child's been running a separate news operation you don't have access to. You're not looking at a distant teen. You're looking at someone who already built an entire communication strategy around you. The real version of their life has its own zip code now, and you don't have a forwarding address. 5. The thing you did that you don't remember. Most parents who get reclassified didn't do anything dramatic. They just made repeating the experience feel expansive. Maybe their kid shared something vulnerable once and it turned into a check-in that never ended. How's your anxiety? Still feeling weird about that? 3 weeks later, still asking. They didn't request a monitoring subscription. They just wanted to be heard once. Or maybe they said something honest at the dinner table and heard it quoted back to them at the family barbecue 3 weeks later. That's how you teach a teenager that private doesn't actually mean private. My mom once told a teacher I couldn't finish a project because, and I'm quoting, he's going through a sensitive phase in front of the whole class. I was 11. I didn't tell her anything real again until I was 26. 15 years of weather updates and school was fine. Once a teenager learns that honesty has hidden costs, surfaces publicly, gets weaponized, becomes a permanent item on the worry list, they make a decision that makes perfect sense. They keep talking to you. They just relocate the real conversation to a group chat with 4 people you've never met. And honestly, it's better lit and lower stakes in there. Also, nobody's asking if they finished their chemistry homework. By the time enough of those moments stack up, they just slowly stop bringing the real version of themselves to you. No announcement, no confrontation. That would actually be easier. At least you'd know it happened. Instead, the house just gets quieter. The conversations get shorter. And one day, you realize you know less about their actual life than their friend's mom does. What keeps the door open? If your teen is still bringing you anything, even the surface version, even the carefully edited draft of something real, they haven't filed the final verdict yet. They're still watching. What changes the math isn't any speech. My entire brand is telling you things, and even I know a speech won't fix this, which is ironic because teenagers can smell speeches forming from 3 rooms away. It's admitting when you get something wrong specifically with the actual thing named. I was wrong about your friend. I made a call without enough information, and that's on me. That lands completely differently than a vague, I'm not perfect, you know. It's asking what they think and actually letting the answer change your position. Most parents ask and then immediately start steering somewhere safer. It's treating their pushback as data instead of a battle to win. Disagreement from a teenager who still cares enough to disagree is a gift. Most parents accidentally return to sender. Teens who still bring you the messy version, the draft instead of the polished summary, still believe you can handle it without turning it into a project. That belief is the entire thing. Their opinion of your opinion only becomes permanent when they stop seeing reasons to trust it. And the parent who keeps showing up quietly, without a monologue, just present enough to change the math, is usually the one they eventually start turning back toward. If this made you rethink something you thought was harmless, watch The Parent Who Did Everything Right and Still Lost Their Child. That video is what it looks like when the account runs to 0 and nobody caught it happening. Same quiet process, adult-sized consequences. Sticko here. Research sources are linked in the description. Yes, I read them so you don't have to spend your Tuesday night inside a PDF written by a man named Gregory.